constellations allow this larger picture to show themselves. And when you set these dynamics up in 3 dimensions, you can see things that you couldn't normally see. So it's making the unseen seen, making visible these patterns and bringing it from experience to awareness. So when we're constellating someone's story, there's a witness. They are witnessing it happening out there. They get a different kind of perspective on it. And these isolated events start to make sense as part of a larger pattern. I call these transformative ritual for healing and learning. And those words are important, right? So transformative, we go in and we come out as something different. This is this shifting of the stance. It changes who we are, and it changes our experience, how we live in the world. We have more capacity, more knowing, more wisdom, and a huge part of it is more compassion. There's something that happens when you're part of someone's story and you really see and feel what they feel. That's what compassion is, to feel with. It builds a really beautiful kind of perspective. And one of the ways I love thinking about transformation is that it's a combination of healing and learning. So this is what constellations do. There's a healing and there's a learning. So the learning is this embodied, intuitive understanding of these principles, right? When you participate in these at a physical level, it lands in you in a different way. The other really powerful learning is getting this felt sense of self and other. This is me. This is my baseline. This is not me. So I'm representing, I'm like, whew, I can feel that representation come in. I can feel it leave. You get a really finely tuned sense that I find really helpful when I'm doing my work, because there's so much spiritual and energetic dynamic to it. Sometimes I come out of working with a client and I'm a little bit off center because of it. And so I need to know who I am so I can get back to me, because the work is so deep and emotional. So this capacity also to just watch how emotions come and go. Like, oh, you start to feel, it's not my grief, but I just feel grief rise and then grief fall. So you get a real, I don't know, it's like an emotional literacy for the movements of emotions through, which I find very helpful. And you also get a kind of systemic perception, this capacity to feel into what the system is saying. And it's this really useful tool to be able to attune to the larger whole. I talked about this bifocal awareness, to be able to listen to the impulses. There's an impulse to do this. I'm tuning in. I allow myself to be a bit of a receiver for these healing impulses. It's great training for facilitation. I find it one of the most actually powerful training tools I can think of for what I do with clients. When I'm working with people, I'm in that space where I'm attuned to the whole, and I'm just listening, and it's just coming, right? It's that capacity to allow it to come. So that's the learning part of it. The healing part of it, there's a whole other category of that. It becomes a kind of, I call it community psychopomp work. So psyche is soul, pomp is guiding the souls across. I have a free online course about psychopomps. If you're curious about that, you can learn more about it. But it's, in a way, it's a kind of sorting. Around death, there's often an issue. The dead get stuck a little bit here. The living are a little bit reaching over there. They're too close to the river. There are all these ways of understanding the right place. So that's part of the healing, is it gets people where they need to go and gets everybody, the dead and the living, where they need to go. And when someone dies, a system is thrown out of balance. And this can help bring it back into balance. It kind of is a recalibration process. So it's a healing both for grief and for whatever's unsettled and unresolved around that. It's a kind of, the way I think about it is that we almost reach up into the field and we invite down a particular situation and we give it bodies, a three-dimensional physical vehicle in which to move through, and then how we move our bodies And how we change the relationship of ourselves in this space changes the relationship of parts of the system. And then when the constellation's done, you let it go and it kind of goes back up, but it's different. So the patterns are different. And the shifts that happen, particularly, I mean, in family constellations, there's amazing shifts that happen around people's issues and structures of that. But in these constellations in particular, the shifts that happen around grief and bringing resolution around grief and just a bigger perspective on what death is and how to navigate it by understanding the map. So, it's transformation. It's individual transformation, and it's also collective transformation. I really believe that as we do this more, we start to deepen the grooves in the collective psyche to make it easier to access these kinds of experiences and access these kinds of principles. And my vision is really that this is an evolving process and that it's a muscle you develop. Being a representative is you get better at it as you do it. And so I have too many visions to be able to probably accomplish in one lifetime, but one of my visions is that we develop these capacities to have groups of experienced representatives who know this territory, who embody this understanding, and that we can then offer this as a service to people. And I think about it kind of like how psychedelic therapy is offering this access to bigger picture journeys at the end of the life. This could be a community version of this. People could bring their really fragile, tender space. They're not coming to be representatives. They're just coming as clients in this, and people could represent and constellate for them. I think it has incredible capacity and possibility to shift how we meet death and loss. And it's a little less intense than psychedelic work for people who aren't quite ready for that or who are just more sensitive and that's not their path.